Oh. Suddenly I can't move. Oh, really? Well, the time isn't moving. Here we go. You can faintly hear music from the waterfall. It's the same one. So we have them. Now what? What do we do with them? So let's jump to the picture of what the Wallace told us. This is easier. I just have a picture of it. You may find a hidden domain if you try to breathe freely. Check. You may find a mysterious door if you look for it where you can see the most. Check. You may find a birthday present in a most beautiful place. Check. If you put it all together, a wondrous secret is revealed. Okay. So back to the game. The picture I just drew, it's titled The Wonder. I wonder what it is. It's just a sort of mash of color. Not entirely clear. The trick, as it were, is to take the crystals themselves, pick them up, and then place them on each other. All three of them. I have a recording of me doing this. I think we'll jump to that. Let's show the recording. Okay. You can tell, looking at the number of days, that this is not the game or the profile we're currently playing. You can also tell by the pictures. I have an excessive number of the Wonder pictures around in this place. The other colorful one at the top by the bookshelf, that one's Or. You know, the scene there was stay or go, and that's the Or picture. Right, enough said. A door. Can end my longing right here. Notice it's white. That's the end of the video clip, but let's jump to my other saved profile. And this. Look at you, Shade. Just riding a stork with the crown on his head. The Shade has commented about this multiple times. He comments about many of the endings, but he has this dream that he was the king. Ah, what a great dream it was, or a beautiful dream that was. I like the way this one is framed, because it's all in white. It's just like the Wonder itself, this globe of white that became a door, and then we just stepped through it. And it's curious though, did the dream become reality, or is it still just a dream? Because we created this globe that we physically walked into. Is this line, this quote, just something the Shade had said before and he's living it out, or is what he's in now a false reality, like a dream? You can also notice the stork. It turns its eye, looks back at the Shade, kind of glares him. Perhaps because of the decision he's made. And this is true with, I believe, all the endings, where there's left some doubt that this was the right choice or not. Well, the one where you commit suicide, the one where you fall from the well, there isn't much room for doubt there what happened. But this one and the ending we've seen on the surface, where this stork was supposed to appear on the top, and he's supposed to give this sort of laugh, chuckle, and then fly off. So the developer did comment that he was happy that when this ending was added, he was able to use the stork that he had created and the animation of it flying. If we consider, I don't want to see how everything has gone dim. We could if we wanted to, I think. Push a button here. We would have the option to start a new game if we wanted to. I'm not going to do that. Here it is. In your innermost cave, your mind rules above all, even over time, over reality and dream. So this, I should point out, having the ability to manipulate time is something that was added. So, as I mentioned when I first played the game on Switch, I thought it strange reading some of the old forum posts that says the game only has 4 endings, when in fact I knew there was 5. And that's because the Switch version came out after this update, where these extended dialogues that you can have with a face were already added to the game. The other addition to the game was the lapis that this comment kind of teaches us about. And that's because the game was originally for a personal computer, PC, Linux, Mac. Right, those are the 3. And you could just manipulate the file yourself, or you can manipulate your computer clock yourself, and you can manipulate time to do as you liked when you played the game. For the Switch, however, it's quite an ordeal, and you're punished in multiple games for manipulating time. So if you change it and then change it back, I think the switch will report to that game, oh, the time has been changed. Even if you've changed it back, you are still punished in those games. And so the developer added Lapis. So that way we can manipulate time as we did and go back and forward in time. So with the update, both things came together, that ending and the ability to have this manipulation of time. So I'm not making a reach here that like, oh, they just said dream, but does that really relate? Well, they came out together in the same update. That's just the point I wanted to make. That in our innermost cave, our mind rules above all over reality and dream. So I like to think that ending, it was somewhat of a dream that the Shade had, but his ambition, it being in his home, he did create reality out of it. It's an interesting way to think about it. I think there is one more picture. Here. This is the first location that we were at for retrieving the 3 crystals. You can see the glow just below us. That's where the crystal was. And this comment that the Shade shares with us, that a stork is making a nest up there. I don't like storks. So for the Shade to be riding a stork, it's sort of a victory, you might imagine. He's overcoming that dragon within himself. He's triumphing over something and has made it beneath him. And he's riding it as a steed to carry him through his dreams. It's quite symbolic that the Shade, with this dream, he's created a reality where he's overcome something that he feared. He rules over it. He rules over all. That's kind of what the Shade feels he has as being this king. It's a symbolic way of thinking of how you deal with your own longing, how you deal with your own sorrow, how you deal with your own depression, and owning it, overcoming it, the things that you don't like. Doesn't matter, making it something that's beneath you. And as the developer has shared, each of the endings, he feels some days he wants to do one thing, some days another. And this one has that feeling of representing, I'm owning, I am making this a reality to overcome these things that thwart me, that pester me, and it's just, I'm the one in control. Back to our current Shade, who's waking up from a little dream. I mentioned before, I want to keep this profile. So I haven't combined the crystals just because we would have to live with this big white dot within our home somewhere. And we can't move it once we create it. So we now have this little marker for the wonder. The only thing left to do really is to hang out for a few days, idle some time, and we'll have reached 400 days. So we've been reading Thus Spake Zarathustra, and he does mention the idea of these people. He calls them backworldsmen, and what he means by that is similar to what the Shade just did. He's creating his own back door. He's making an exit to the reality around him. He's become a backworldsman, I feel, with that ending, where he's kind of, how do you say, left the stage, and he's behind the scenes playing out his own fantasy and living life in that way. So I try to put this picture back. The stork, also remember, is a pretty big symbol. This image of the stork is called doubt, and overcoming doubt. That's what I feel that ending represents. This image was called defeat, so was the one above it. This egg being smashed and the stork being alive, the stork being defeated and the egg being a hold. That's considered victory. We don't really know if the stork is just a representation of doubt, or if perhaps this theory that the Shade has lived a life before now, and perhaps he did die in some way because of this stork. That's kind of what I imagined with this little, how would you say, mural of images. Let's read a book. Let's take a look at our thoughts. Birthday is complete. Wait 400 days. So never leave these caves. What did he mean by that? Well, we know exactly what he meant by that. Oops. What did I press there? Oh, do we have 2 Maddox? I thought we would have... No, okay. It took 3 Maddox to unlock the treasure. Okay. But that's been a long journey through the tower, into the door, and then just waiting for our birthday to reach that, the secret ending. It's quite a lot of content. I'm sure a lot of the people who've played the game before did enjoy all the new things that were added. For myself and my best friend, when we played the game, I never put the pieces together. She did, but she declined to actually go through with it as an ending. And instead, she opted for the surface, while the ending I chose is one we will see here in 11 days, 18 hours, 56-ish minutes as it counts down. So the only thing we have to do is just idle more time. We've gotten quite far in this book. Thus spoke Zarathustra. I want to make an attempt between now and tomorrow to see if we can finish or become close to finishing. So, chapter 65, The Magician. So, story so far. Zarathustra, this is the 4th book. He was approached by another hermit. They shared some words. Zarathustra heard a scream, somebody in distress and pain. He went down, met 2 kings, spoke with them briefly, and found that the kings are not like other kings that he wishes to bash with his words, and that these are respectable folk, and he would like to spend some time with them. So he invited him back to his home, pressed on, and there he walked basically over a man who was waiting in the swamp with his arm inside the swamp. He didn't mean to step on the guy, and this guy, he knows who Zarathustra is, and says this is his home. This is the place where he is knowledgeable and wise, not of swamps, but of the slugs that live in the swamps, and not of the slugs themselves, but of the slugs' brains. He's become an expert in them, and he had his arm stuck in the swamp because or not slugs, leeches, sorry, and he wanted to, I guess, commune with the leeches and study them. So he had his arm stuck in the swamp, and Zarathustra said, well, I'm sorry for stepping on you. Have dinner with me. And so he invited him also back up to his home where he has a crowd gathering. But then he heard a cry of distress, and he again leaves that guy and continues. So the magician. When, however, Zarathustra had gone round a rock, then saw he on the same path, not far below him, a man who threw his limbs about like a maniac, and at last tumbled to the ground on his belly. Halt, said then Zarathustra to his heart. He there must surely be the higher man. From him came that dreadful cry of distress. I will see if I can help him. When, however, he ran to the spot where the man lay on the ground, he found a trembling old man, with fixed eyes, and in spite of all Zarathustra's efforts to lift him, he set him again on his feet. It was all in vain. The unfortunate one also did not seem to notice that someone was beside him. On the contrary, he continually looked around with moving gestures, like one forsaken and isolated from all the world. At last, however, after much trembling and convulsion, and curling himself up, he began to lament thus. Who warmeth me? Who loveth me still? Give ardent fingers, give heartening charcoal warmers, own outstretched, trembling, like him, half dead and cold, whose feet one warmth, and shaken by unfamiliar fevers, shivering with sharpened icy-cold frost arrows by thee pursued, my fancy, ineffable, recondite, sore frightening, thou huntsman, hind the cloud banks, now lightning struck by thee, thou mocking eye, that me in darkness watcheth. Thus do I lie, bend myself, twist myself, convulsed with all eternal torture, and smitten by thee, cruelest huntsman, thou unfamiliar god. Smite deeper, smite yet once more, pierce through and rend my heart. What meaneth this torture with dull, indented arrows? Why look'st thou hither, of human pain not weary, with mischief-loving, godly flash glances? Not murder wilt thou, but torture, torture. But for why? Me? Torture? Thou mischief-loving, unfamiliar god? Ha, ha, thou stealest nigh in midnight's gloomy hour? What will thou? Speak. Thou crouch'st me, press'st, now far too closely. Thou hear'st me breathing. Thou overest my heart. Thou ever jealous one, of what? Pray, ever jealous. Off, off. Why in the ladder wouldst thou get in? To heart in clamour, to mine own secretest conceptions in clamour. Shameless one, thou unknown one, thief, what seekest thou by stealing? What seekest thou by thy stealing? What seekest thou by thy hearkening? What seekest thou by thy torturing? Thou torturer, thou hangman god, or shall I, as the mastiffs do, roll me before thee, and cringing, enraptured, frantical, my tail friendly waggle? In vain, goad further, cruelest goader, no dog. Thy game just am I, cruelest huntsman, thy proudest of captives, thou robber, hide the cloud banks. Speak, finally, thou lightning-veiled one, thou unknown one, speak. What wilt thou, highway ambusher, from me? What wilt thou, unfamiliar god? What, ransom gold? How much of a ransom gold? Solicit much. that biddeth my pride, and be concise, that biddeth mine other pride. Me want'st thou, me, entire? And torturest me, fool that thou art, dead torturest quite my pride. Give love to me, who warmth me still, who loveth me still. Give ardent fingers, give heartening charcoal warmers, give me the lonesomest, the ice, sevenfold frozen ice, for very enemies, for foes, doth make one thirst. Give yield to me, cruelest foe, thyself. Away, there fled he surely, my final only comrade, my greatest foe, mine unfamiliar, my hangman god. Nay, come thou back, with all of thy great tortures, to me, the last of lonesome ones. Come thou back, all my heart tears in streamlets trickle their course to thee, and all my final hearty fervor upgloweth to thee. Come thou back, mine unfamiliar god, my pain, my final bliss. Here, however, Zarathustra could no longer restrain himself. He took his staff, struck the roller with all his might. Stop this, cried he to him with a wrathful laughter. Stop this, thou stage player, thou false coiner, thou liar from the very heart. I know thee well. I will soon make worm legs to thee, thou evil magician. I know well how to make it hot for such as thou. Leave off, said the old man, and sprang up from the ground. Strike me no more, O Zarathustra. I did it only for amusement. That kind of thing belongeth to mine art. Thee thyself I wanted to put to the proof when I gave this performance, and verily, thou hast well detected me. Thou thyself hast given me no small proof of thyself. Thou art hard, thou wise Zarathustra, hard strikest thou with thy truths. Thy cudgel forceth from me this truth. Flatter not, answered Zarathustra, still excited and frowning. Thou stage player from the heart, thou art false. Why speakest thou of truth? Thou peacock of peacocks, thou sea of vanity, what didst thou represent before me? Thou evil magician, whom I was meant to believe in when thou wailedst in such wise. The penitent in spirit, said the old man, it was him I represented. Thou thyself once dividest this expression. The poet and a magician, who at last turneth his spirit against himself, a transformed one, who freezes to death by his bad science and conscience. And just acknowledge it, it was long, O Zarathustra, before thou discoveredst my trick and lie. Thou believedst in my distress when thou heldst my head with both thy hands. I heard thee lament, we have loved him too little, because I so far deceived thee. My wickedness rejoiced in me. Thou mayest have deceived subtler ones than I, said Zarathustra sternly. I am not on my guard against deceivers. I have to be. Without precaution, so willeth my lot. Thou, however, must deceive. So far do I know thee. Thou must ever be equivocal, trivocal, quadrivocal, and quinvocal. Okay, come on. Just adding the numbers. Even what thou hast now confessed is not nearly true enough, nor false enough for me. Thou bad false coiner, how couldst thou do otherwise? Thy very malady wouldst thou whitewash if thou showed thyself naked to thy physician. Thus didst thou whitewash thy lie before me, and thou saidst I did so only for amusement. There was also seriousness therein. Thou art something of a penitent in spirit. I divine thee well. Thou hast become the enchanter of all the world, but for thyself thou hast no lie or artifice left. Thou art disenchanted to thyself. Thou hast reaped disguise as thy one truth. No word in thee is any longer genuine, but thy mouth is so. That is to say, the disgust that cleaveth unto thy mouth. Who art thou at all? Cried here the old magician with defiant voice. Who dareth to speak thus unto me, the greatest man now living? And a green flash shot from the eye at Zarathustra, but immediately after he changed, and said sadly, Oh, Zarathustra, I am weary of it. I am disgusted with mine arts. I am not great. Why do I dissemble? But thou knowest it well. I sought for greatness. A great man I wanted to appear, and persuaded many. Lie hath been beyond my power. On it do I collapse. Zarathustra, everything is a lie in me, but that I collapse, this my collapsing is genuine. It honoreth me, said Zarathustra gloomily, looking down with sidelong glance. It honoreth thee, that thou soughtst for greatness, but it betrayeth thee also. Thou art not great. Thou bad old magician, that is the best and the honestest thing I honor in thee, that thou hast become weary of thyself, and hast expressed it. I am not great. Therein do I honor thee as a penitent in spirit, and although only for twinkling of an eye, in that one moment wast thou genuine. But tell me, what seekst thou here in my forests and rocks? And if thou hast put thyself in my way, what proof of me wouldst thou have? Wherein didst thou put me to the test? Thus spake Zarathustra, and his eyes sparkled. But the old magician kept silence for a while. Then said he, Did I put thee to the test? I seek only. Zarathustra, I seek a genuine one, a right one, a simple one, and unequivocal one, a man of perfect honesty, a vessel of wisdom, a saint of knowledge, a great man. Knowest thou it not, O Zarathustra? I seek Zarathustra. And here there arose a long silence between them. Zarathustra, however, became profoundly absorbed in thought, that he shut his eyes, but afterwards, coming back to the situation, he grasped on the hand of the magician and said, full of politeness and policy, Well, up thither leadeth the way. There is the cave of Zarathustra. In it mayest thou seek him who wouldst fain find, and ask counsel of mine animals, mine eagle and my serpent. They shall help thee to seek. My cave, however, is large. I myself, to be sure, I have as yet seen no great man. That which is great, the acutest eye is at present insensible to it. It is the kingdom of the populace. Many a one have I found who stretched and inflated himself, and the people cried, Behold, a great man! But what good do all bellows do? The wind cometh out at last. At last bursteth the frog, which hath inflated itself too long. Then cometh out the wind, to prick a swollen one in the belly. I call good pastime. Hear that, ye boys. Our today is of the populace, who still knoweth what is great and what is small. Who could there seek successfully for greatness? A fool only. It succeedeth with fools. Thou seekest for great men, thou strange fool. Who taught that to thee? Is today the time for it? O thou bad seeker, why dost thou tempt me? Thus spake Zarathustra, comforted in his heart, and went laughing on his way. Quick break. Chapter 66. that be 66? They're all different characters. How could that be two sixes? The Roman numerals are just weird. Out of service. Not long, however, after Zarathustra had freed himself from the magician, he again saw a person sitting beside the path which he followed, namely, a tall, black man with a haggard, pale countenance. This man grieved him exceedingly. Alas, said he to his heart, there sitteth disguised affliction. We think he is of the type of the priests. What do they want in my domain? What? Hardly have I escaped from that magician. I must another necromancer run again across my path. Some sorcerer with laying on of hands, some somber wanderer worker by the grace of God, some anointed world maligner, whom may the devil take. The devil is never at the place which would be his right place. He always cometh too late, that cursed dwarf and clubfoot. Thus cursed Zarathustra impatiently in his heart, and considered how, with averted look, he might slip past the black man. But, behold, it came about otherwise. For at the same moment had the sitting one already perceived him, and not unlike one whom an unexpected happiness overtaketh, he sprang to his feet, and went straight towards Zarathustra. Whoever thou art, thou traveller, said he, help a strayed one, a seeker, an old man who may here easily come to grief. The world here is strange to me, and remote. Wild beasts also did I hear howling, and he who could have given me protection, he is himself no more. I was seeking the pious man, a saint, and an anchorite, who, alone in his forest, had not yet heard of what all the world knoweth at present. What doth all the world know at present? Asked Zarathustra. Perhaps that the old God no longer liveth, in whom all the world once believed? Thou sayest it, answered the old man sorrowfully, and I served that old God until his last hour. Now, however, am I out of service, without master, and yet not free. Likewise am I no longer merry, even for an hour, except it be in recollections. Therefore did I ascend unto these mountains, that I might finally have a festival for myself once more, as becometh an old pope and church father, for know it, that I am the last pope, a festival of pious recollections and divine services. Now, however, is he himself dead, the most pious of men, the saint in the forest, who praised his God constantly with singing and mumbling. He himself found I no longer when I found his cot. 2 wolves found I therein, which howled on account of his death, for all animals loved him. Then did I haste away. Had I thus come in vain into these forests and mountains, then did my heart determine that I should seek another, the most pious of all, those who believe not in God. My heart determined that I should seek Zarathustra. Thus spake the hoary man, and gazed with keen eyes at him who stood before him. Zarathustra, however, seized the hand of the old pope, and regarded it a long while with admiration. Lo, thou venerable one, said he then, what a fine and long hand! That is the hand of one who hath ever dispensed blessings. Now, however, doth it hold fast him whom thou seekest, me, Zarathustra. It is I, the ungodly Zarathustra, who saith, who is ungodlier than I, that I may enjoy his teaching? Thus spake Zarathustra, and penetrated with his glances the thoughts, and arrear thoughts of the old pope. At last the latter began. The latter began? Who speaks like that? He who is most loved and possessed him hath now also lost him most. Lo, I myself am surely the most godless of us at present. But who could rejoice at that? Thou servedst him to the last, asked Zarathustra thoughtfully, after a deep silence. Thou knowest how he died. Is it true when they say that sympathy choked him? that he saw how man hung on the cross and could not endure it, that his love to man became his hell, and at last his death. The old pope, however, did not answer, but looked aside timidly, with a painful and gloomy expression. "Let him go," said Zarathustra after prolonged meditation, still looking at the old man straight in the eye. "Let him go. He is gone. And though it honoureth thee that thou speakest only in praise of this dead one, yet thou knowest as well as I who he was, and that he went curious ways. To speak before 3 eyes, said the old pope cheerfully, he was blind of 1 eye, in divine manners. I am more enlightened than Zarathustra himself, and may well be so. My love served him long years, my will followed all his will. A good servant, however, knoweth everything, and many a thing even which a master hideth from himself. He was a hidden god, full of secrecy. Verily, he did not come by his son, otherwise than by secret ways. At the door of his faith standeth adultery. Whoever extolleth him as a god of love doth not think highly enough of love itself. Did not that god want also to be judge? But the loving one loveth irrespective of reward and requital. When he was young, that god out of the Orient, then was he harsh and revengeful, and built himself a hell for the delight of his favorites. At last, however, he became old, and soft, and mellow, and pitiful, more like a grandfather than a father, but most like a tottering old grandmother. There did he sit shriveled in his chimney corner, fretting on account of his weak legs, world-weary, will-weary, and one day he suffocated. It was all too great pity. Thou old pope, said here Zarathustra, interposing, hadst thou seen that with thine eyes, it could well have happened in that way, and in that way, and also otherwise. When gods die, they always die many kinds of death. Well, at all events, one way or another, he is gone. He was counter to the taste of mine ears and eyes, worse that I should not like to say against him. I love everything that looketh bright and speaketh honestly, but he, thou knowest it, forsooth, thou old priest, there was something of thy type in him, the priest type. He was equivocal. He was also indistinct, how he raged at us, this wrath-snorter, because we understood him badly. Why did he not speak more clearly? And if the fault lay in our ears, why did he give us ears that heard him badly? If there was dirt in our ears, well, who put it in them? Too much miscarried with him, this potter, who had not learned thoroughly. That he took revenge on his pots and creations, however, because they turned out badly. That was a sin against good taste. There is also good taste in piety. This, at last said, away with such a god. Better to have no god. Better to set up destiny on one's own account. Better to be a fool. Better to be God oneself. What do I hear? Said then the old pope, with intent ears. Zarathustra, thou art more pious than thou believest. With such an unbelief, some god in thee hath converted thee to thine ungodliness. It is not thy piety itself. Is it not thy piety itself which no longer letteth thee believe in a god? And thine overgreat honesty will yet lead thee even beyond good and evil. Behold, what hath been reserved for thee. Thou hast eyes and hands and mouth, which have been predestined for blessing from eternity. One doth not bless with the hand alone. Nigh unto thee, that though thou professest to be the ungodliest one, I feel a hale and holy odor of long benedictions. I feel glad and grieved thereby. Let me be thy guest, Zarathustra, for a single night. Nowhere on earth shall I now feel better than with thee. Amen, and so, and shall it be, said Zarathustra, with great astonishment. Up thither leadeth the way. There lieth the cave of Zarathustra. Gladly, forsooth, would I conduct thee thither myself. Thither, I like thither, thou venerable one, for I love all pious men. But now a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from thee. In my domain shall no one come to grief. My cave is a good haven, and best of all, would I like to put every sorrowful one again on firm land and firm legs. Who, however, could take thy melancholy off thy shoulders? For that I am too weak. Long, verily, should we have to wait until someone reawoke thy God for thee. That old God liveth no more. He is indeed dead. Thus spake Zarathustra. He's chasing again after a voice. I thought he already found that man. That was the magician, the one we had just read about. It seems that he is collecting one of everyone, one of each person that Zarathustra had thrashed with his words. And he's finding one of each who has turned from that way and who's instead seeking something else, who's given up on their old ways and wishes to be something else. It seems like the greater man that the first hermit said was, "Go there, Zarathustra, your time has come, and you will find there the greater man." It's not in just one person, but the collective of them, each one of them realizing where they had fallen short, such as the great man. He wished to be great, but realized that he wasn't great. And being honest with himself is what made him great. This priest man who was a servant to someone else who I guess was a higher level of priest, but they called him God. That's fine. And that man had died. And he doesn't know what to do because that was his life. And so he sought for someone else. So why not Zarathustra, the godless, since he too is now godless? And they found in each other something redeemable. Zarathustra found in that guy that by giving up his God, he's beginning to see with clear eyes for once. And that new, freshly godless man said to Zarathustra, well, in some ways, by you being godless, you've kind of devoted yourself to godlessness. And in that way, you've found a piety. You found something that most people who follow God cannot find. You know, that sort of devotion. Devoted to godlessness. So, chapter 67. The Ugliest Man. Yeah, we should have time to get through this one. And again, did Zarathustra's feet run through mountains and forests? And his eyes sought and sought, but nowhere was he to be seen. What? But nowhere was he to be seen whom they wanted to see. Okay. The sorely distressed sufferer and crier. On the whole way, however, he rejoiced in his heart, and was full of gratitude. What good thing, said he, hath this day given me as amends for its bad beginning? What strange interlocutors have I found? At their words will I now chew a long while. As a good corn, small, shall my teeth grind and crush them, until they flow like milk into my soul. When, however, the path again curved round a rock, all at once the landscape changed, and Zarathustra entered into a realm of death. Here bristled aloft black and red cliffs, without any grass, tree, or bird's voice, for it was a valley which all animals avoided, even the beasts of prey, except that a species of ugly, thick, green serpent came here to die, when they became old. Therefore the shepherds called this valley Serpent Death. Zarathustra, however, became absorbed in dark recollections, for it seemed to him as if he had once before stood in this valley. Much heaviness settled on his mind, so that he walked slowly and always more slowly. At last he stood still. Then, however, when he opened his eyes, he saw something sitting by the wayside, shaped like a man, and hardly like a man, something nondescript. And all at once there came over Zarathustra a great shame, because he had gazed on such a thing. Blushing up to the very roots of his white hair, he turned aside his glance, raised his foot, that he might leave this ill-starred place. Then, however, came the dead wilderness vocal, for from the ground a noise welled up, gurgling and rattling, as water gurgleth and rattleth at night through stopped-up water-pipes, and at last it turned to human-voiced and human speech. It sounded thus: Zarathustra, Zarathustra, read my riddle. Say, what is the revenge on the witness? I entice thee back. Here is smooth ice. See to it, that thy pride doth not here break its legs. Thou thinkest thyself wise, thou proud Zarathustra. Read then the riddle, thou hard nutcracker, the riddle that I am. Say then, who am I? When, however, Zarathustra had heard these words, what think ye then took him place in his soul? Pity overcame him, and he sank down all at once, like an oak that hath long withstood many tree fellers, heavily, suddenly, to the terror of even those who meant to fell it. But immediately he got up again from the ground, and his countenance became stern. I know thee well, said he, with a brazen voice. Thou art the murderer of God. Let me go. Thou couldst not endure him who beheld thee, whoever beheld thee through and through, thou ugliest man, thou tookest revenge on this witness. Thus spake Zarathustra, and was about to go, but the nondescript grasped at a corner of his garment, and began anew to gurgle and seek for words. Stay, said he at last. Stay, do not pass by. I have divined what axe it was that struck thee to the ground. Hail to thee, Zarathustra, that thou art again upon thy feet. Thou hast divined, I know it well, how the man feeleth who killeth him, the murderer of God. Stay, sit down here beside me. It is not to no purpose. To whom would I go but unto thee? Stay, sit down. Do not, however, look at me. Honor thus mine ugliness. They persecute me. Now art thou my last refuge. Not with their hatred, not with their bailiffs. Oh, such persecution would I mock at. But be proud and cheerful. Hath not all successes hitherto been with the well-prosecuted ones? And he who persecuteth well learneth readily to be obsequious, and once he is, put behind. But it is their pity. Their pity is it from which I flee away, and flee to thee, Zarathustra. Protect me, thou, my last refuge, thou sole one who divinest me. Thou hast divined how the man feeleth who killed him. Stay, and if thou wilt go, thou impatient one, go not the way that I came. That way is bad. Art thou angry with me because I have already wrecked language too long, because I have already counseled thee? But know that it is I, the ugliest man, who have also the largest, heaviest feet. Where I have gone, the way is bad. I tread all paths to death and destruction. But that thou passed me by in silence, that thou blushedst, I saw it well, thereby did I know thee as Zarathustra. Everyone else would have thrown to me his alms, his pity, in look and speech, but for that I am not beggar enough. That didst thou divine. For that I am too rich in what is great, frightful, ugliest, most unutterable. Thy shame, O Zarathustra, honored me. What difficulty did I get out of the crowd of the pitiful, that I might find the only one who at present teacheth that pity is obtrusive? Thyself, O Zarathustra, whether it be pity of the god, or whether it be human pity, it is offensive to modesty, and unwillingness to help may be nobler than the virtue that rusheth to do so. That, however, namely, pity, is called virtue itself at present, by all petty people. They have no reverence for the great misfortune, great ugliness, great failure. Beyond all these do I look, as a dog looketh over the backs of thronging flocks of sheep. They are petty, good-willed, grey people. As the heron looketh contemptuously at shallow pools, with backward bent head, so do I look at the throng of grey little waves and wills and souls. Too long have we acknowledged them to be right, those petty people, so we have at last given them power as well. And now do they teach that good is only what petty people call good, and truth is at present what the preacher spake himself, who himself sprang from them, that singular saint and advocate of the petty people, who testified of himself, I am the truth. That immodest one hath long made the petty people greatly puffed up. He who taught no small error, when he taught, I am the truth. Hath an immodest one ever been answered more courteously? Thou, however, O Zarathustra, passed him by, and saith, Nay, nay, 3 times nay. Thou warnest against his error. Thou warnest the first to do so, against pity, not everyone, not none, but thyself, and thy type. Thou art ashamed of the shame of the great sufferer, and verily, when thou sayest, from pity there cometh a heavy cloud, take heed, ye men. When thou teachest, all creators are hard, all great love is beyond their pity, Zarathustra, how well versed dost thou seem to me in weather signs. Thou thyself, however, warn thyself also against thy pity, for many are on their way to thee, many suffering, doubting, despairing, drowning, freezing ones. I warn thee also against myself. Thou hast read my best, my worst riddle, myself, and what I have done. I know the axe that felleth thee, but he had to die. He looked with eyes which beheld everything. He beheld man's depths and dregs, and his sudden ignominy and ugliness. His pity knew no modesty. He crept into my dirtiest corners. This most prying, over-intrusive, over-pitiful one had to die. He ever beheld me. Such a witness, I would have revenge, or not to live myself. The God who beheld everything and also man, that God had to die. Man cannot endure it, that such a witness should live. Thus spake the ugliest man. Zarathustra, however, got up, and prepared to go on, for he felt frozen to the very bowels. Thou, nondescript, said he, thou warnest me against thy path. As thanks for it, I praise mine to thee. Behold, up thither is the cave of Zarathustra. My cave is large and deep, and hath many corners. There findeth he that is most hidden his hiding place, and close beside it there are 100 lurking places and by places for creeping, fluttering, and hopping creatures. Thou outcast, who hast cast thyself out, thou wilt not live amongst men, and men's pity? Well then, do like me. Thus wilt thou learn also from me. Only the doer learneth. And talk first and foremost to mine animals, the proudest animal and the wisest animal. They might well be the right counselors for us both. Thus spake Zarathustra, and went on his way, more thoughtfully and slowly, even than before, for he asked himself many things, and hardly knew what to answer. How poor indeed is man, thought he in his heart, how ugly, how wheezy, how full of hidden shame. They tell me that man loveth himself. How great must that self-love be? How much contempt is opposed to it? Even this man hath loved himself, as he hath despised himself. A great lover methink he is, and a great despiser. No one have I yet found who more thoroughly despised himself. Even that is elevation. Alas, was this perhaps the higher man whose cry I heard? I love the great despisers. Man is something that hath to be surpassed. I think what I'm seeing then is the direction of what Zarathustra wanted to, I say preach because he used to be, or wanted to be a preacher. The way he talks just has that sort of pattern behind it. Granted, Zarathustra is not a real person. He's a written person. This book was written by Nietzsche, and he, I guess, imagined this knowledge and wanted to share it in some way. But instead of sharing it as a list of parables, kind of like when we read those fables before, and at the end of some of the fables, it would give you some parable. Oh, dreadful be the one who does this thing, something silly like that. It makes more sense to let the story speak for itself. And so when Nietzsche wrote this book, he was just letting the story speak for itself. Even though Zarathustra is like talking and preachy, the lessons of it is, I think, what we're starting to see. These individuals who are from these different walks of life and who have decided they don't enjoy that. That's not living, and they would rather live. And Zarathustra is one by one meeting these people and inviting them to his home to either just stay there for dinner or to live there, and that they can learn from each other. It's interesting because in the very beginning, Zarathustra learned from his mistake of trying to preach to people, and he wanted to have followers of his own. And we didn't really see that, not until, well, the end of the third book, where he was sitting on top of a mountain, wanting to fish, and he was going to use his own happiness as bait, saying that it's his happiness, even though he may be living in this weird place at the top of a mountain, away from society, he is still full of actual pure happiness. And let that be the bait, the guide to guide people to him. And he wished for men to come to him, because it wasn't time for him to yet go down off of his mountain for some odd reason. But here he is now, kind of going down and around his mountain and meeting all these people who he wished to fish up. But each one being a sort of example of attaining that higher man. That's what Zarathustra is speaking about, a Superman, and becoming that. And here are examples of each of these people becoming super in their own way, overcoming themselves. And you could say, like the Shade, becoming king over themselves. Well, there's not much left to go. There's still quite a bit of book. We're not going to be able to finish the book. We could shift the time and just continue the book till it's finished, but it's fine. Tomorrow we will be finishing Longing. We will count down these last 10 days. I think I'm going to come back on and set the day till like the last day, as close as I can, manipulate time a little bit, and then set the clock. So that way we can have that countdown for tomorrow. Let's see. Maybe we can leave a book for the Shade to read. Dream Days. We should have read that one last night. King's Pest. Golden Age. Let the Shade read that.